The UK is preparing for another change in leadership. Keir Starmer has resigned as Prime Minister today, paving the way for Andy Burnham to take over. Well, what does another political shake-up for the UK mean for the country and its allies? Good evening and welcome to Primetime. I'm your host, Katie Wilson. First this evening, Andy Burnham has begun his first day as Britain's new Prime Minister, promising a different style of leadership and immediate action on domestic issues. He's pledged to tackle rough sleeping, announce cost of living measures and push ahead with plans to devolve more power to UK regions. Our correspondent Ollie Barrett reports from London.
Well, right from the word go, Andy Burnham has a different style to Keir Starmer. He gave that first speech outside number 10 Downing Street without a lectern, with no notes, speaking from memory, trying to be the relaxed politician that he has been known as in the recent years when he's been the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He promised that he would tackle rough sleeping as the first thing that he does when he gets behind his desk in Downing Street. But also later this week, he says he'll be setting out measures to help people with the difficult cost of living. So we wait to see exactly what that looks like and exactly how Andy Burnham and his government are going to pay for it. He talked again about devolving power from here in Westminster to the regions, the towns and the cities of the United Kingdom. So there's obviously going to be a change in style, but also a change in some policy direction as well. His critics say he doesn't have a mandate. His critics say he's been avoiding media scrutiny up to the point that he's got himself into number 10 Downing Street. But now that he is the Prime Minister, there will be a huge amount of scrutiny on him, although not here at Westminster, because that building behind me is on recess now for MPs until September. So no Prime Minister's question sessions for Andy Burnham in the coming weeks, for example. He knows he has a huge to-do list domestically, internationally though as well, with American attacks continuing on Iran, the war in Ukraine continuing, plenty more besides. Andy Burnham has a very, very tough task ahead. But in that speech, his first speech as Prime Minister, he also tried to inject some hope and some optimism into what lies ahead for the UK under his leadership. Ollie Barrett in London for A News.
Well, as Andy Burnham takes office, promising to reshape the country and tackle the cost of living crisis, on the streets of London, many voters say they still know little about the former Greater Manchester Mayor or what his premiership will bring.
I think there's quite a bit of still uncertainty. We don't know what he's bringing on board. Personally, I'm just surprised with how many prime ministers we've had in the past couple of years. So I'm just hoping that he will just take up the mantle and do what's best for the people, really, yeah.
The weirdest thing about him is that nobody really knows who he is. Yeah, new guy. I think it's going to end up really, really small time in the office.
I think, look, it's changed. We're going to have to see how it goes. I don't really know him very well, so I'll be interested to learn more about his policies and what he's got planned. So I think nationalisation of steel and how he's going to take that forward, I don't know. So we'll just have to see. I don't know him very well, I'm afraid.
I don't know him, personally, but he seems to have a lot of ideas, and he's done good things in Manchester. I know that's a positive thing. I just don't know whether he would do another election. I don't know. Yeah, and there's a lot of problems around the world. I don't know who can solve them all.
Leaning into the left a little bit more, maybe less trying to win over reform voters, and just normal progressive good policies, I guess. That's it. Yeah, investment, that kind of thing.
Well, joining me now is political analyst John Coulter. Thank you for being with us. Now, Keir Starmer officially left the office today after less than 2 years as Prime Minister. What ultimately brought his leadership to an end? What was the straw that broke the camel's back?
Well, good evening, Katie. I think the straw that broke this camel's back in Keir Starmer's situation was the fact that he could not deliver the manifesto that he promised a couple of years ago. The key word in his manifesto from 2 years ago was the word change. But what has changed from the previous Tory administration that had been in power for years? Absolutely, really nothing. And I think even though he had a massive majority in the House of Commons in terms of MPs, he had a very disastrous election in May in the local councils. So that basically a lot of MPs, what we would call Labour MPs, the red wall, a lot of Labour MPs, particularly those members of Parliament who had wafer-thin majorities, vote majorities, they must have been looking over their shoulders, and they felt that the only way forward was to basically get rid of Keir Starmer. Now, we have Andy Burnham in as the 5th Prime Minister in 4 years. It was a coronation rather than a contest in terms of the Labour Party. It wasn't even a general election. So you will get the right wing and the left wing, the right wing under the Reform UK Party and the left wing under the Green Party. They may be pushing for a general election from that point of view. But there's an old saying here in the United Kingdom, fine words butter no parsnips. Now what that means, Katie, is we've heard very good speeches, and your previous contributor, Ollie, made the fact that Andy Burnham was able to speak no lectern, no notes, straight off the top of his head. But the big question is, he's made promises, Andy Burnham, but who pays for them? Who's going to foot the bill for all of this? And I suppose as well, he's also made the suggestion that he's going to devolve more power to the regions. But does this mean if, say, for example, all this cost of living crisis that he's going to solve, all these other promises that he's going to make or will make from that point of view, that he's going to devolve the costs of those to the regions? So it may well be the north of England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales that actually have to foot the bill for this new Burnham bounce, as we may call it.
It's interesting you say that, as I think Andy Burnham is associated with the North, and we've heard the voices from London there. Is there a bit of a North-South divide in terms of Andy Burnham's popularity, and what can we expect in terms of levelling up, something we heard so much in recent years?
Yes, certainly whenever he got into Parliament. And let's not forget, in terms of trying to get the leadership of the Labour Party, this is his 3rd time lucky. He's had 2 previous attempts at being trying to be the leader of the Labour Party. As well as that, he's also served in cabinet, so he has cabinet experience. But as you say, he came back into politics as a really, on the back of a really good time as the mayor of Greater Manchester. He was viewed almost as the king of the North. Now, the key question is, can he take the success that he had in Greater Manchester and apply that across the United Kingdom? Because let's not face or underscore the problems that he faces. In Scotland, the Nationalists are still in control. In Wales, Labour has been dumped out in favour of the Nationalists. And here in Northern Ireland, we have the Sinn Féin as the First Minister. And also what we don't have here at the Northern Ireland Assembly is we haven't got a budget yet. And we're 3 months into the financial year. So he's got a lot of proving to do that he can cope with the job as Prime Minister. Or otherwise, we could see, as Keir Starmer was probably going to face, a vote of no confidence. At the present minute, he's in the honeymoon period. At the present minute, he can dish out all these great theoretical policies, but it still comes down to the basics. Will he have to raise tax? Will he have to raise the threshold at which the super rich pay taxes to be able to pay for all of this. And then if you want to throw it into the mix, how good is he on the international scene? We have the Middle East crisis boiling up at the minute. We haven't got a resolution to the Ukrainian situation. And somewhere down the line, and I don't mean to be the prophet of doom, we're going to have to deal with the Russians.
Now it's interesting you talk about foreign policy. Could we expect a shift in Britain's approach to Ukraine, NATO, the Middle East, Trump, in fact? What's that going to be like, foreign policy in a Burnham leadership?
Yes, I think Burnham will have to show a bit of political muscle here, Katie, from the point of view that almost Keir Starmer, and he would probably not agree with this, Keir Starmer, he was almost seen as Trump's little puppet, that he would do, the little lapdog from the United Kingdom that would jump whenever Trump said, jump how high. So from that point of view, he's got to be able to stand up to Trump to show that he is a Prime Minister. Ironically, in Burnham's speech, opening speech as Prime Minister, he had a wee jibe at the Thatcherite era in the 1980s. Well, he's got to become Labour's Maggie Thatcher. He's got to be able to show that he has political muscle. Just as Maggie Thatcher took on the Argentinians in the Falklands War in 1982, he maybe will have to show a bit more backbone when it comes to dealing with Iran, when it comes to supporting NATO from that point of view, especially with the Russians breathing down his neck in Ukraine. And there's also the other aspect, European relations. He needs to be very careful that it isn't misconceived that he's trying to undo Brexit. In other words, try to get the United Kingdom back into the European Union, because if that was to happen, it could be a real economic disaster for the United Kingdom.
And now, obviously, we've got this change of leadership. Burnham is facing all of these challenges only 2 years after Labour won that landslide. What does this tell us about the Labour Party, but also its relationship with the electorate?
I think it quite clearly tells us, Katie, that there's vast instability in the body politic in the United Kingdom. Perhaps what he should do, and it's a very high-risk strategy, just as he went into the by-election that got him into Parliament, that has obviously created the domino effect for him to become Prime Minister. Maybe the time is now, during this political honeymoon time, to strike hard and go for a general election and basically push Reform UK and push the Green Party out of the way. The Conservative Party is very weak at the present minute. They're not polling well in opinion polls. So perhaps now, strike while the iron is hot, call a general election and show that he has the people of the United Kingdom behind him and not just his specific constituency.
That's interesting you say that, as Theresa May went for a similar strategy and it somewhat backfired, lowering her majority, but then we saw this strategy pay off in Japan with Sanai Takaichi. So tell me more about that and tell me how you think that could make those challenges Burnham is facing a bit easier.
Yes, you mentioned Theresa May, various Tory Prime Ministers, where it has backfired. The problem is that there's big discontent within the Tory party at that time. What Burnham now has is he's a big majority in the House of Commons, but he also has the support of those people. Basically, it almost seems anybody but Starmer is the way forward for Burnham. And it's interesting to note he's already started to rebuild the cabinet, and he's axing Starmer loyalists from that. So it'll be interesting from that point of view. The first thing he's got to do is bolster up his own position within the Labour Party, and he's got plenty of supporters to be able to do that. But again, it comes back to the situation. Has he got policies that will deliver, that will be financially viable? It's all very well putting out stuff that you're going to deal with the cost of living crisis. One good thing that he has started is given the green light to start North Sea oil drilling. Although, again, if you're thinking conspiratorially about that, is that a way of knocking out the Scottish nationalists? Because that money will be coming into Scotland as well as the United Kingdom. So from that point of view, what he'll be looking at is to basically develop a policy that not only shores up his own position within the British Labour Party and boosts the Labour Party north of the border in Scotland, west of the border in Wales, and also solves the fiscal problem here in Northern Ireland. So from that point of view, at least the North Sea oil drilling aspect is working.
And you mentioned that cabinet reshuffle, John. Who are some of the figures that we might see coming back into the cabinet? Maybe Angela Rayner's name has been mentioned as someone who might return, now that we're seeing Starmer's allies leaving.
Yes, I think what you're going to look at here, Katie, is making the Labour Party a broad ideological church for all. The Labour Party, if you take a look at the many MPs that came in, are from the soft left, the centre and the hard left. So I think that if he's going to build a cabinet, it won't necessarily be Burnham loyalists that he puts in there, but basically people from the various ideological wings of the party to ensure that there's no coup against him in the same way as there was a coup d'etat politically against Starmer. And also he'll be looking at the history of the aspect, the fact that he is the 5th Prime Minister in 4 years. He'll not want to end up like the Tories that ended up, even though they had a massive majority. The big mistake that the Tory party made was in not forming cabinets, their prime ministers not forming cabinets that represented the broad feeling of the Tory party. Ideologically, the Tory prime ministers just had people that supported their specific point of view, not the broad church. What Burnham's got to do is create a cabinet of the broad church ideologically.
And final question, John, what do you think are the key things that we should be looking out for in Burnham's first 100 days as Prime Minister?
I think the key thing that he's going to work out, or that you need to look out for, Katie, is how is he going to pay for all these policies? It's all very well, as I said, putting out these wonderful policies, but who pays the bill? Is it going to be the taxpayer that ultimately has to pay for this? Yes, he's talked an awful lot about getting rid or reducing the cost of living crisis. The other thing that is going to be key, how much investment is he going to put into defence? I've mentioned the Iran war. I've mentioned the war in Ukraine, the threat from Russia. Is he going to bolster that? The other thing that he's got to look at is how is he going to stop the small boat crisis of illegal asylum seekers, illegal immigrants making their way in rubber dinghies across the English Channel to the United Kingdom? How does he stop that? That's a key aspect that we'll know in 100 days. If those are falling, then possibly we're in a situation where he doesn't need to call a snap general election to bolster up his position in Parliament.
Very interesting, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll speak with you more over those next 100 days. It's great to speak to you as always, John. Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, after the break, a drone attack has halted oil loading at one of Kazakhstan's key export terminals. What could this mean for global energy markets and security in the Black Sea? Don't go away. Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Kazakhstan has condemned a drone attack on 2 tankers loading crude at the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal in the Black Sea. Oil loading has been suspended while authorities assess the damage, raising concerns over disruption to one of the country's main export routes. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzana reports.
Oil loading at the Caspian Pipeline Consortium's Black Sea terminal has been suspended after 2 tankers carrying Kazakh crude were hit in drone attacks, according to Kazakhstan's Energy Ministry. The vessels were loading oil when they came under attack. Fires on board were quickly extinguished with no injuries or oil spill reported. Operations remain suspended while the damage is being assessed. Kazakhstan strongly condemned the strikes, calling attacks on civilian energy infrastructure unacceptable and warning they put global energy security and critical supply chains at risk. The foreign ministry said the attacks on July 17th and 19th targeted Kazakhstan's economic interests and raised concerns that the mechanism for sharing information on civilian vessels had not been respected, putting international crews at risk. Kazakhstan has called for an immediate end to attacks on civilian shipping and says it will consider all available legal measures once the damage assessment is complete. The CPC pipeline is Kazakhstan's main export route, carrying about 80% of the country's crude exports and more than 60 million tons of oil each year. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Well, joining us now to discuss this further is Richard Spooner, member of the advisory board at the Caspian Policy Centre in Astana. Thank you for joining us, Richard. Now, how significant is all of this and the disruption it could potentially cause, even if it's temporary?
I would say the significance is that this isn't the first time that tankers in Novorossiysk on the Black Sea with Kazakh oil have been hit. And I have to say that I find it hard to understand why Ukraine would be targeting ships that are exporting oil produced at Kazakh oil fields with U.S. operator companies as the main operators. We're talking about the Tengiz field and the Kashagan field. I find it hard to understand why they would be targeted. These operations have nothing to do with damaging Russia's oil industry, whether it's in terms of producing oil or refining oil or transporting oil. These are strictly exports of oil that belong to Kazakhstan.
Do we have any answers to that, Richard? Has anybody responded or given any official statements as to what has happened here?
Well, the Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan made a statement that's exactly what your correspondent in Almaty just reported. Mm-hmm. They're condemning this, and they're demanding that attacks like this cease. Now, the CPC, of course, which is the pipeline itself, the pipeline consortium, where Russian equity, Russian ownership is, depending on how you calculate the Shell Rosneft joint venture, is either around 43 or 50%. They've called it a terrorist act, which I don't think is surprising given CPC's equity, as I said. The Kazakhstan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has called for an end to this. They're not calling it an act of terror, and I don't expect that Kazakhstan, any official Kazakhstan organization, is going to refer to this as an act of terror. But I do believe that they're bewildered as to why these particular tankers would be targeted, even though, yes, it's a Russian city, a Russian port, Novorossiysk, but I don't see really what gain there is for Ukraine in doing this.
In this, the CPC has said is the fifth direct attack on civilian infrastructure. What does that point to in terms of energy supply chains in the Black Sea?
Obviously, something like this creates nervousness. As your reporter pointed out, Kazakhstan exports approximately 80% of its oil through this port. That's not something that Kazakhstan can reconsider about sending it somewhere else. In the last few years, Kazakhstan has started exporting more oil through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. In other words, shipping it across the Caspian Sea to Baku and then on to to Ceyhan in Turkey. But and that volume is growing incrementally each year since the war in Ukraine was launched by Russia. But there's no other place for Kazakhstan to send such large volumes of oil. And so people who are depending on receiving these exports of Kazakh oil naturally are going to be concerned.
And if this remains suspended for several days, which regions or industries are likely to feel that first? You've kind of indicated on how reliant Kazakhstan is on this port.
Well, you know, I don't have a list of who's actually purchasing this oil that's leaving Novorossiysk from the Kazakh oil fields, but there are obviously going to be countries relying upon this crude oil for their national supplies and other end users. So, you know, any unpredictability in the delivery of oil has an impact on prices, has an impact on confidence. So I do believe that there are going to be some conversations about this to try and find a way so that these attacks stop. Because after all, as I said, we all, I think, have noticed how effective drone attacks have been on Russian territory, specifically about oil infrastructure. But this has nothing to do with that.
And how do you expect the next months will pan out? Are you expecting an increase, or do you think maybe this could be a turning point?
An increase in terms of attacks at on the oil at Novorossiysk? Mm-hmm. I have to believe that reason will prevail because, as I said, this is really not in Ukraine's interest. I mean, I understand Ukraine is at war, and Ukraine is determined to strike at every viable target. I simply question whether this is a viable target in terms of Ukraine's own interests. I don't see what they gain by this. I mean, as I said, Kazakhstan is not going to come out and refer to this as a terrorist act or anything like that, but I just don't understand what Ukraine hopes to gain by this.
And have we had any official response to this from Kyiv?
Not that I've heard. When I checked a few hours ago, there hadn't been any. You know, maybe they're thinking about it. Maybe there's a debate going on there about whether these particular drone strikes are perhaps not in their best interest in terms of winning their war.
Obviously, we don't have a response from Kyiv, but all eyes on them. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme and for providing your insight.
My pleasure.
After the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe, so do stay with us.
More than 20,000 partisan fighters have been hidden. We found only 3,000.
My grandmother had 3 brothers. In the graveyard, the body of just one of them.
Their struggle was very unequal and against a state that had defeated such a force as Nazi Germany.
A lot of resistant fighters in the beginning of Soviet occupation actually would end up here, if not killed somewhere in the woods.
She was arrested at her home. Her 7-year-old daughter ran to her and screamed, "Mom, please take me with you." This record having the names of the individuals who were placed in the list of deportations.
I was born in Kengia, in a labor camp. My mother was a partisan liaison.
The first years were extremely difficult, of course. Poverty, hunger. The temperature sometimes dropped to minus 50 degrees.
The train stations, like the one behind me, once said goodbyes to thousands of people carried from across the Baltic states toward Siberia.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. And first we go to Berlin. President Ilham Aliyev is in Germany for bilateral talks with energy cooperation, the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process and regional security expected to top the agenda. Our very own Orhan Amashov joins us live with the latest ahead of the meeting. Guten Abend, Orhan. How's everything in Berlin?
Well, everything's absolutely here. Within the framework of President Aliyev's official visit to Germany, there are a number of issues of bilateral nature and also of wider European nature that are to be discussed between the Azerbaijani president and the German chancellor. Tomorrow, the Germany questions asked, of course. Well, Germany relations have been historically described as substantial, underdeveloped, but also very pragmatic. The reason why they're substantial is because Germany is the biggest economy in Europe, naturally, and it's Azerbaijan's second biggest trading partner inside the European Union after Italy. And Azerbaijan is Germany's biggest partner in the South Caucasus economically. So that's a substantial part of the story. The reason why they are pragmatic is because they're fundamentally based on energy, and many other related matters. But they're also because the potentiality is massively there, but it has not been properly utilized. So that meeting that's going to take place between President Aliyev and Chancellor tomorrow, and President Aliyev is visiting this country at the invitation of German Chancellor. We remember back in December 2025, this invitation was issued. And we also remember here, the Chancellor, and then on the grapevine, everybody was saying that President Aliyev was about to visit Germany. That visit didn't take place, and I imagine it was postponed and taking place, of course, this month, in the upcoming days. And one more point, we remember President Steinmeier in April in Azerbaijan. There are a number of things that need to be attained. Trade turnover between Azerbaijan and Germany stands at $1.7 billion. It's a significant figure, but it must be, of course, naturally increased. Azerbaijani natural gas is being sent to Germany as well, together with Austria. Germany is not really reliant on Azerbaijan gas. It's a key actor in Europe, and naturally it wants European energy security to be maintained. And we know that 12.9 BCM annually is being sent to Europe from Azerbaijan as part of the Southern Gas Corridor system. And Germany, of course, naturally is encouraging this process. I imagine the key issues will be contingent on energy, connectivity, middle corridor, and many other related matters.
Very interesting. All eyes on tomorrow then. Thank you very much, Orhan, for joining us from Berlin.
Thank you, Katie.
Now, foreign investment in Uzbekistan continues to grow, with the number of companies backed by overseas investors surpassing 20,000 for the first time. New figures also show China further strengthening its position as the country's largest source of foreign businesses. Our correspondent Sevil Rajapova reports from Tashkent.
Uzbekistan has reached a new milestone in attracting foreign investment. As of July 1st, the number of foreign invested companies operating in the country exceeded 20,500, marking a record high. That's almost a 23% increase compared with a year ago, according to the National Statistics Committee. China remains the largest source of foreign businesses in Uzbekistan, followed by Russia and Turkey. Meanwhile, Pakistan posted the fastest growth rate over the past year, with the number of its companies nearly doubling. Most foreign invested companies operate in trade and manufacturing, while the IT sector has now overtaken construction as a leading destination for overseas investment. The trend follows the recent Tashkent International Investment Forum, where investment agreements worth more than $43 billion were signed. Officials say the continued growth reflects rising international confidence in Uzbekistan's economic reforms and expanding business opportunities. It is Sivul Vajak for Primetime Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
Transit trade between Afghanistan and Pakistan has reportedly fallen to its lowest level in years, dropping sharply during Pakistan's 2026 fiscal year. The decline comes as Afghanistan redirects more of its trade through Iran, Central Asia and other international markets. Tamim Bahis has more.
Pakistani media report that the value of Afghan transit trade through Pakistan has fallen to just $367 million. Before 2021, the annual value stood at around $5 billion, with approximately 89,000 containers transported each year. In the latest fiscal year, however, that number reportedly dropped to about 11,600 containers. The figures represent a dramatic reversal from 2023, when more than 102,000 containers passed through Pakistan and the total value of transit trade reached $6.7 billion. The report identifies the closure of border crossings between Afghanistan and Pakistan, as well as Kabul's growing use of Iranian routes as major reasons for the decline. Afghan officials say the country had already begun reducing its reliance on Pakistan before the crossings were closed. Shafi Azam, head of the economic relations at Afghanistan's foreign ministry, says more than 60% of Afghan goods were previously destined for Pakistan. He says exporters are now reaching markets in Central Asia, Russia, China, India, the Gulf and Europe through newly established trade corridors. Azam says border restrictions have accelerated Afghanistan's market diversification. He has urged Afghan businesses to improve product quality and packaging to meet international standards and remain competitive in these new markets. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Georgia is deepening its artificial intelligence ties with China. The announcement comes weeks after the two countries upgraded their relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Nini Nikolaishvili has more on that from Tbilisi.
In Shanghai, at the high-level meeting on global governance of artificial intelligence, Economy Minister Mariam Kruishvili confirmed a joint AI working group with China's National Development and Reform Commission. It's the first concrete output of a signed memorandum between the two governments. Georgia is also building its first AI research center in Kutaisi and drafting a national AI strategy from scratch. Previously, back in June, China's Xi Jinping and Georgian President Mikhail Kavalashvili jointly announced the upgrade to a comprehensive strategic partnership, 3 years after the original 2023 agreement. Kruishvili linked that political shift directly to the AI cooperation and to a separate infrastructure strategic move for a Black Sea submarine fiber optic cable and new data centers, which Tbilisi is marketing as turning Georgia into a digital corridor between Europe and Asia. So far, no timeline, funding figures or specific deliverables have been attached to the China Working Group, which puts it well behind Georgia's track record with the European Union. The bloc and Tbilisi already had a funded AI partnership since 2022 called the Horizon Europe project. That linked Georgian researchers with Germany's TFKI and France INRIA until last year. Now a multi-million euro follow-up program has begun this year with the EU and 13 international partners. Whether the Kutaisi Center becomes a genuine hub or stays at the memorandum stage remains to be seen. Nini Nikolaishvili, Batumi, A News.
After the break, we'll take a look at the other global stories making the headlines today. Don't go anywhere.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
more than 20,000 partisan fighters have been hidden. We found only 3,000.
My grandmother had 3 brothers. In the graveyard, the body of just one of them.
Their struggle was very unequal and against a state that had defeated such a force as Nazi Germany.
A lot of resistant fighters in the beginning of Soviet occupation actually would end up here, if not killed somewhere in the woods.
She was arrested at her home. Her 7-year-old daughter ran to her and screamed, "Mom, please take me with you." This report having the names of the individuals who were placed in the list of deportations.
I was born in Kengia, in a labor camp. My mother was a partisan liaison.
The first years were extremely difficult, of course. Poverty, hunger. The temperature sometimes dropped to minus 50 degrees.
The train stations, like the one behind me, once said goodbyes to thousands of people carried from across the Baltic states toward Siberia.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Over to the US-Iran conflict now, where fresh American strikes are hitting multiple Iranian cities, including a deadly attack in Tabriz. Yet, despite the fierce military exchange and an active naval blockade, Tehran says it's now reviewing urgent de-escalation proposals.
The US military has significantly widened its offensive on Iran. An attack targeting a military zone southwest of Tabriz left 1 dead and several injured, while multiple sites were hit in Bushehr and Isfahan. The barrage follows strikes on Iran's Darkovin nuclear site, though the International Atomic Energy Agency ruled out radiological hazards. At sea, American forces are enforcing a strict blockade around the Strait of Hormuz, redirecting 6 commercial vessels and disabling another.
We control the strait. They don't control anything. So we'll see what happens, but we hit them very hard again tonight. And we did that in honor of the probably 3, it's probably 3 as opposed to 2 great patriots.
Despite the Pakistani-mediated ceasefire signed last month completely collapsing, back-channel diplomacy is reviving.
Proposals have been put forward by mediators. We were informed of them and we have received them. However, please allow me to refrain from going into detail at present. Nevertheless, the reality is that the diplomatic service has been working actively in recent days, and certain ideas from a number of mediators have reached us. Yes, this is confirmed.
However, during the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman's briefing on Monday, he added that Tehran firmly denied President Trump's recent claim that an American prisoner in Iran was released as a goodwill gesture. Meanwhile, the tactical theater continues to expand as casualties rise. Official US losses stand at 17 dead, including a recent fatality in northern Iraq and more than 420 wounded. In response, Tehran has activated a Code 110, an emergency protocol for systemic retaliation. Under Operation Nezor 2, the Revolutionary Guards claim local intelligence assisted in targeting US aircraft at Aqaba Airport, while its prior strikes in Jordan are alleged to have killed dozens.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have declared a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia after the 2 sides traded fire last week. The Iran-backed militant group said the maritime embargo is in response to what they describe as Saudi Arabia's continued siege on the people of Yemen. The blockade puts at risk the flow of millions of barrels of oil that the kingdom exports via the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces announce a maritime embargo against the criminal Saudi enemy based on the equation of a blockade for a blockade, and it will enter into force effective immediately upon the issuance of this statement. The Yemeni armed forces affirm their complete readiness for all options, and that any foolishness committed by the reckless Saudi enemy through a full-scale escalation, we will confront with a full-scale and harsh escalation by God's will and power.
Azerbaijan has denied playing any official role in reported secret meetings between German politicians and Russian representatives in Baku. Sources close to the government told A News that the talks were a private initiative. It follows German media reports that prominent politicians met Kremlin-linked figures in Baku between 2024 and 2025. Here's more on that story.
Azerbaijan has denied any official involvement in reported secret talks between German politicians and Russian representatives held in Baku. Sources close to the Azerbaijani government have confirmed to A News that official Baku had no involvement whatsoever in the secret talks. The gatherings were a strictly private initiative, organised entirely at the independent discretion of the participating delegations. The clarification follows media reports by Germany's ARD programme Kontrast and Die Zeit, which said several prominent German politicians met Kremlin-linked figures in Baku and Abu Dhabi between 2024 and 2025 as part of unofficial back-channel contacts. The reports have sparked criticism in Germany over the meetings, which allegedly included a Russian official under EU sanctions.
Armenian authorities have launched a criminal investigation into allegations that voters were offered bribes to boost support for a political party during June's elections.
Armenia's Anti-Corruption Committee said on Monday that it had opened criminal proceedings over alleged electoral bribery involving supporters of the Strong Armenia party. The committee said party supporters, acting by prior agreement, had promised bribes to a group of voters in the Massis community of Ararat province in an effort to secure the highest possible number of votes for the party. Authorities said the evidence was obtained during joint operations by the Anti-Corruption Committee and the Yerevan City Police Department. The committee also released recordings linked to the investigation. In one conversation, the speakers discuss registering 4 people and finding rented accommodation in the village. Another exchange focuses on a group of voters and their participation in the election. The recording then appears to show a discussion about where the voters should be registered and how they should cast their ballots.
Look, you know what the thing is? If they have to vote, let them vote for the one we want. If not, that house is mine. I am not giving permission for them to come and participate in the elections at that address.
The Anti-Corruption Committee said several people had been detained. Searches and other procedural actions have also been carried out.
Georgia's tourism sector earned around $107 million from Azerbaijani visitors in the first half of 2026. It marks a nearly 5% increase compared to the same period last year. According to the National Bank of Georgia, Azerbaijan ranked among the top 5 markets for tourism revenue. The European Union remained the largest contributor to Georgia's tourism, with almost 20% of the total tourism revenue for the first half of 2026. Russia followed in second place with around 16%. To sport now, and football's biggest prize has a new home. Spain beat Argentina 1-0 after extra time to win the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It was a final that delivered drama on and off the pitch as fans, world leaders and global stars gathered for the biggest night in football. Here's a look back.
Celebrations and fireworks lit up as Spain were crowned world champions again after a 1-0 extra-time victory against defending champions Argentina in the 2026 FIFA World Cup final in New Jersey. The win ends a 16-year wait after the last time the men's team picked up the trophy. Spanish supporters erupted after the final whistle, with scenes of joy from the stadium in New Jersey to the streets of Spain.
Like, it took forever. I was just nervous. I didn't want to go to penalties. That was it. They deserved to win, pure domination. They were the better team, so I called it. So sorry, Messi and Argentina, but Spain's a better team now.
However, for Argentina, the defending champions who lifted the trophy in Qatar in 2022 missed the chance to become the first team since Brazil in 1962 to retain the World Cup. Their hopes faded after Enzo Fernandez was sent off late in normal time, while 39-year-old Lionel Messi was left without another World Cup title in what is expected to be his final appearance at the tournament.
What can I say? We're sad because we weren't able to bring home the trophy. My deepest thanks to everyone, to all the fans and all the people who carried us today. Whatever little strength we had left, they gave us that strength and pushed us to keep fighting until the very end with the match still open, but it wasn't to be. They were deserved winners. That's the reality.
Meanwhile, more than 80,000 fans watched one of the biggest halftime shows in World Cup history, featuring performances by Madonna, Shakira, Burna Boy and other international stars. Security was also heightened as US President Donald Trump joined FIFA President Gianni Infantino on the podium to present the medals.
So we're very proud of our country. We're very proud of the job that was done by everybody. We congratulate Gianni Infantino and all of his staff and the incredible job they did.
As the celebrations continued, Spain left the stadium as world champions once again, while Argentina departed, knowing their reign had come to an end.
And finally, the future of a renowned Mexican art collection, including works by its most celebrated painter, Frida Kahlo, has intensified the debate over the country's heritage. Campaigners fear private agreements could keep important works outside the country long term.
Works from one of Mexico's most important private art collections are heading to Europe, intensifying a dispute over ownership and national heritage. The Modern Stories exhibition closed on Sunday in Mexico City after attracting more than 310,000 visitors since February. It presented 68 works from the 160-piece Gelman Santander collection, including 10 by famous Mexican painter Frida Kahlo. Film producer Jacques Gelman and his wife, art collector Natasha Gelman, assembled the collection. Works from it had not been shown in Mexico for 2 decades. In January, Spanish bank Santander announced a multi-year exhibition agreement. The tour will begin at Foro Santander in Spain before some Kahlo pieces join retrospectives in Switzerland and Norway. Critics say private owners bought part of the collection in 2023 with a bank loan and later pledged it to Santander as collateral. Some of those works are designated as artistic monuments and protected under Mexican law. For campaigners, the dispute goes beyond legal ownership.
The direction the world is heading is that pieces considered valuable and part of a society's heritage should remain in the place where they hold their greatest significance, where they were created, for the audience they were intended for, the country of those who created them. In that sense, the decisions of the INBAL and the Ministry of Culture go in the opposite direction. They go against the direction of the world.
Mexico's National Institute of Fine Arts and Literature, or INBAL, says courts confirmed the current owner's title. It says protected status does not affect ownership and permanent export is prohibited, making the tour temporary. Authorities say the collection will return in 2028 for an exhibition at Marco in Monterrey. Critics say that return does not settle its longer-term future. They cite a leaked agreement reportedly establishing an initial 5-year period abroad and allowing renewals without limit.
That's all we've got time for tonight on Primetime. From all of us here in the studio, thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night.